Today is a traditional day for glorifying the spiritual master, and it is also the disappearance day of Srila Sanatana Goswami. Now, when we glorify the spiritual master, we must always remember the spiritual master as the servant through parampara of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is a position and capacity and service of service. Just like Srila Prabhupada, setting the impeccable example, said that he thinks of all his disciples as little spiritual masters that his Guru Maharaj sent him to train up. Sometimes you hear it said that the spiritual master says whatever Krishna says, and you might think, well, what is so special about that? In one sense, it's not special, but in another sense, it is very special that in all circumstances you say only what Krishna says, because Krishna can say some very inconceivable things. Just like Arjuna. He had good reasons not to fight the battle of Kurukshetra, right? And Krishna told him, you're speaking big words, but you're talking like a fool. So to always say what Krishna says in any situation, especially the trying, calamitous situations of this world, is very difficult. It can be, unless you're highly committed to seeing through the words of Krishna. And that is the benefit of a genuine guru. You can see through the guru's words, through the parampara, to Krishna. Just like when you offer your food. I love the way Srila Prabhupada explained the offering process. When you offer food to your spiritual master, he passes it to his spiritual master, and his spiritual master passes it to his spiritual master. And it goes all the way up the parampara to Krishna. And then Krishna eats, and Krishna passes it down through the parampara. So you might say, well, we don't see all that going on. But what is the power of our seeing? Another point to remember on this day is that Srila Prabhupada desired everyone, all of his disciples, all devotees of Krishna, to become spiritual masters, and in that way cover the world with not hundreds, but thousands upon thousands of gurus. So that means you. How can that be possible? I'll read you something from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Adi Leela. Chapter 17, text 126 purport. This is the section in Chaitanya Charitamrita where the Muslims are complaining to the Chandkazi about all the noise that the Hindus are making, chanting in kirtan. And so the Chandkazi is wondering how the oppressed Hindus, so-called Hindus, became so lively when they've been oppressed for so long and afraid to practice their dharma. Even the Chandkazi went to the house of Vaishnavas to break the mridanga. And he said, for so long you did not follow the regular principles of the Hindu religion, but now you are following them with great enthusiasm. May I know by whose strength you are doing so? So Prabhupada writes in the purport, actually, That was a fact. I'm jumping ahead. Although the members of the so-called Hindu society had followed the social customs and formulas, they had practically forgotten to execute their religious principles strictly. In other words, they were following all the social protocols and taking that to be dharma. But with the presence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they actually began following the regular principles according to his order. Now listen to this. That order is still existing. And anywhere and everywhere, in all parts of the world, one can execute it. So what is that order? That order is to become a spiritual master under the direction of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. How? By following the regular principles, chanting daily at least 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and preaching the cult of Krishna consciousness all over the world. If we adhere to the order of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we shall get spiritual strength without a doubt, and we shall be free to preach this cult of the Hare Krishna movement and not be hampered by anyone. So this is a very extraordinary point to remember on this special day. So let's talk about Srila Sanatana Goswami. First, his identity. This is described by Kavi Karnapur in Gaura Ganadesh Deepika, which lists the identities of Lord Chaitanya's associates in Krishna Lila and vice versa. Ya Rupa Manjari Presta Prasyad Rati Manjari Sochate Nama Bedena Lavanga Manjari Budai Saja Gora Binatanu Sarvaradhya Sanatana Tameva Pravishat Karyan Muni Ratna Sanatana. Translation. Rati Manjari, who was previously very dear to Rupa Manjari and was also known by some wise persons as Lavanga Manjari, has become the worshipable Sanatan, who is non-different from Gaura himself. The jewel among sages, Sanatan Kumar, of the four Kumars, has also entered into him to fulfill a certain mission. So this may sound confusing to you. How can Sanatana Goswami in Krishna Lila be Rati Manjari, also considered Lavanga Manjari? Sometimes the names are interchangeable. Has become Sanatana Goswami in Gaura Lila, but also Sanatan Kumar has entered into Sanatana Goswami to fulfill a certain mission. This mysticism is described in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, which I recommend all those who have sufficiently read Prabhupada's books, Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, to read the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust publication of Brihad Bhagavatamrita. There it is described how spiritual personalities can combine together into one person and then separate. So, Gaura Ganadesh Deepika by Kavi Karnapur, the associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, tells us that Sanatan Kumar also entered into Sanatana Goswami. Now, what about Sanatana Goswami's life before manifesting himself as one of the foremost devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? His life is described in Chaitanya Charitamrita and Bhakti Ratnakara. More than that, there's not any reliable information about the ancestral line of Sanatana Goswami. He became involved with the Muslim government of Bengal. At that time, the Muslims had conquered Bengal. And Sanatana Goswami, being very educated and competent, although born in a top caste, top Brahmana caste, Saraswati Brahmana caste, he associated very intimately with Mohammedans and therefore was considered an outcast in strict Brahmana society. He would go to the homes of Mohammedans. He's working for them in the government. He was actually prime minister. And his brother Rupa was, some say, the finance minister. So this is how deeply embedded they were in the Muslim government. Sanatana Goswami was very learned from childhood. He studied the Shastras and since childhood was especially attached to Srimad Bhagavatam. He studied under the leading scholar, Vidyavachaspati. At that time, 500 years or more ago, you could be famous as a master of the Shastras, whereas today, in mundane society, who cares? If you say you're a master of IT or AI, everyone falls at your feet. Master of Srimad Bhagavatam, that doesn't pay the bills. So the rigid caste distinctions and protocols of so-called Hindu society were so strict that, for example, Sanatana's father would, just by seeing a Muslim, would perform atonement rituals. And this was considered religion. Try to do that in London. Sanatana Goswami, who was then known as Shakara Malik, considered himself fallen. He's the epitome of Vaishnava humility. He thought himself lower than a malecha, an untouchable meat eater, because he was associating in this way, in a lowly manner, although he's born in the highest class of brahmanas. But he never thought of himself in that way. Therefore, the Vaishnava Shastras say that through Rupa also and Sanatana Goswami, the Supreme Personality of Godhead taught humility. A devotee is always eager to appreciate others' service. A devotee is always eager to learn from others how they do their service, how they live their spiritual life. This is what makes bhakti life so enthusiastic, so invigorating, so nourishing. A real devotee knows how to learn from other devotees, and that takes observation. So you may know, the third class devotee, the lowest level of devotee, the Kanistadakari, just comes and offers pranams to the deity, bows down to the deity, but has no clear idea or shows any clear idea of how to deal with Vaishnavas. So bhakti really accelerates when we rise above that third-class level of a devotee, also known as prakrita bhakta, materialistic devotee. So Rupa and Sanatana Goswamis, by their example, showed such humility, even though materially they were so expert. Sanatana Goswami was so expert as Shakara Malik that the Muslim ruler of Bengal left the whole kingdom to Sanatan, to Shakara Malik, to govern, while the ruler went out plundering in neighboring areas of what is now India. So let's hear how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives various teachings to the people of this world. And notice how Kaviraj Goswami in Chaitanya Charitamrita attributes glories to others. If we don't know how to do this, we're missing out on the jewels of Vaishnava behavior. How to glorify others, how to appreciate others, how not to be envious of other devotees. So I always point out that you only envy someone who has something better or someone who does something better than you. You don't envy someone in a lower position or a troubled position. You only envy those who are higher and who show some better ability than you. So then why be envious? Why not just appreciate? You're better. It's such a relief. And thank the person for their abilities, what they've done that is superior. This is essential Vaishnava behavior. Always be ready to attribute praise to the glories of others. This will make your Vaishnava life exciting. You're always on the watch for who is doing something wonderful for Krishna. It could be someone just sweeping the floor so expertly. You're watching for the littlest sign of dedication to Krishna. You know the example from the earliest days of ISKCON. You can read about it in Prabhupada Lilamrita, the Second Avenue days. I myself used to wander in that neighborhood in New York, never knowing that right in the midst of my wanderings, there was the Hare Krishna Matchless Gifts storefront. No doubt I wasn't ready. But with Prabhupada's tiny beginning congregation gathered in that storefront, while Prabhupada was giving a lecture, a drunk wanders in. You know that. Holding a roll of toilet paper. And right in the middle of class, as Prabhupada is speaking, the drunk walks in and gives that roll of toilet paper, puts it down near Prabhupada, and then walks out, staggers out. What was Prabhupada's response? Who remembers?
He's doing some service.
His devotional service has just begun. So a real devotee is always observant of those things and wants to fan that spark. That's what it actually means to do the service of spiritual master, to fan the spark of whatever little devotion is there so that that spark turns into a blaze. For that service, the spiritual master is dear to Krishna for the fanning of the spark. Sometimes the question is asked, is the spiritual master, does he know everything? Does he know the score of the latest football match? He's in touch with Krishna. If we ask him that question, he should know. No, it's not like that. As the Shastra explains, the spiritual master knows what Krishna wants that the spiritual master knows. Enough to guide the disciple back to Godhead. So this doesn't mean, just like you'll hear Prabhupada speaking, the foremost devotee, you'll hear him sometimes apparently forget verses that he's quoting. Sometimes his secretary will have to point out some point that Prabhupada will say, what was that? What is that? So what are you going to say? You don't know everything. The Guru knows as much as Krishna wants the Guru to know for the sake of instructing the disciple so the disciple achieves the goal of human life by going back to Godhead. So let's hear how Kaviraj Goswami is attributing credit, glorification to others. He says, Jai Jai Nityananda Ram, Yanha Kripate Painu Vrindavana Dham. He's on his way to Vrindavan because of the order coming to him in a dream of Nityananda. So on his way to Vrindavan, he's saying, all glory to Lord Nityananda Balaram, by whose mercy I have attained shelter in the transcendental abode of Vrindavan. He doesn't consider, I'm going to Vrindavan on my own strength, my own merit. No, he's saying, by the mercy of Nityananda Balaram, I've attained shelter in Vrindavan, that transcendental place. He's showing you his dependency. In Kali Yuga, it's considered a great sign of weakness to show your dependency on someone else. You're supposed to have high self-esteem. You're supposed to be able to demonstrate that you are standing on your own 2 feet. What's the result of that? People are literally going crazy, trying to prove how self-reliant they are, how self-defining they are, how self-validating they are. This is hard work. To constantly come up with your own so-called identity, validate yourself, define yourself. It sounds so trendy, doesn't it? So inviting by the power of Maya. I'm doing me. I'm being me. I decide who I am and what I'll do. This is a very psychologically excruciating burden to carry. It looks attractive to live separate from Krishna and define yourself. But the result is psychological madness, and you're seeing that more and more with the increase in mental illness, depression, anxiety disorders. People are stressed out to the max. Yet notice the opposite when it comes to the Vaishnava. Always willing and ready to depend on others and glorify that dependency on others, while being dynamic in Krishna's service. Even taking the initiative in Krishna's service, but always giving the credit to the devotees and Krishna. Only by their mercy can I forge ahead and do this and do that. So Kaviraj Goswami is on his way to Vrindavan, and he's saying, this is by the mercy of Nityananda that I can have shelter in Vrindavan Dham. What else does he say? Jaya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Kripa Moy Yahan Hoite Painu Rup Sanatanasroy. All glory to the merciful Lord Nityananda, by whose mercy I have attained shelter at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Sri Sanatan. So we are explaining Sanatan Goswami's pre-devotee life. He's an eternal associate of the Lord, but he, in his Leela, demonstrates what it's like to be a conditioned soul who eventually finds his way to Krishna's lotus feet. So he's Shakara Malik, and Rupa Goswami is Dabyakas. Eventually, they meet up with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the small town of Ramakeli. You can still visit there today. Anyone here been to Ramakeli? It's still there. They went to meet Mahaprabhu in the middle of the night. First they met with devotees like Nityananda and Haridas Thakur, because you have to get the blessings of the devotees to approach Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then they came into Mahaprabhu's presence and fell at his feet and presented themselves in such a classic way of humility. You are Patita Pavana, deliver the most fallen. If you don't deliver us, you will be hard-pressed to find someone worse. If you want your reputation to be intact as Patita Pavana, the deliverer the most fallen, if you want your reputation to be justified, then you have to deliver us. Then your saving power will be glorified throughout the universe. We're very ashamed to come before you, but we're begging for your mercy. And so Mahaprabhu said, from this point on, you are known as Rupa and Sanatan. And all the Vaishnavas cheered, Ki Jai. And Mahaprabhu asked the Vaishnavas, including Nityananda, Haridas Thakur, and others, give your blessings to these two. So that's Vaishnav life. Not envious, always eager to appreciate the glories of other devotees, because it's Krishna who is acting through them in whatever they do. So Kaviraj Goswami is saying, I've attained the shelter of Sri Rupa and Sri Sanatan by the mercy of Lord Nityananda. He goes on to say, by his mercy, Nityananda's mercy, I have attained the shelter of Sri Raghunath Das Goswami. And by his mercy, I have found the refuge of Sri Swarup Damodar. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains, anyone desiring to become expert in the service of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna should always aspire to be under the guidance of Swarup Damodar Goswami, Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, and Raghunath Das Goswami. To come under the protection of the Goswamis, one must get the mercy and grace of Nityananda Prabhu. The author has tried to explain this fact in these two verses. So Srila Sanatan Goswami is known as the Bhakti Siddhantacharya. He's the Acharya of devotional conclusions. When you read Chaitanya Charitamrita, you'll notice there's a big chapter called The Lord's Instructions to Sanatan Goswami. It's also known as Sanatan Shiksha. It is Sanatana Goswami who establishes the need to serve Krishna and to understand that you are his eternal servant. When Sanatana Goswami meets up with Lord Chaitanya in Varanasi, also known as Benares, what does he say? Nij jati nij sangi patita adam, ku vishaya kupe padi goinainu janam. I'm lowborn. All my associates are low. I'm drowning all my life in the well of sinful materialism. I don't know who I am. I don't know why I'm suffering the threefold miseries of material nature. If I don't know this, how can I be of any benefit to myself? People say I'm a great scholar. He was. And I'm such a fool, I believe them. But how could that be? How can I be a great scholar when I don't know what I am, why I'm suffering? He's teaching us how to take the first step in bhakti. To be on solid ground means to understand you are Krishna's eternal servant, not the servant of Maya. So in this way, Sanatana Goswami is known as the Bhakti Siddhanta Acharya, the Acharya of Sambandha. You know Sambandha, Abhideya, Prayojana. So Sambandha means understanding your relationship as servant of Krishna and being established in that relationship. And then comes Abhideya, acting in that relationship, performing devotional service. That's Rupa Goswami. He's the Rasacharya. He's the Acharya of Rasa. He describes in Nectar Devotion the different flavors of loving relationships with Krishna. Very soon, sometime this year, the BBT will be publishing Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu in 5 volumes. 750 pages each. Actually, you may not know it, but Srila Prabhupada started translating and commenting on Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He did around the first 25 verses, and then for some reason he stopped. So Nectar Devotion is the summary study Prabhupada did for Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So now the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust has spent almost 10 years making a top quality rendition of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu with full indexes, all kinds of explanatory notes, all kinds of helpful things in the appendices. So that'll come as a 5-volume set sometime later this year. Be the first in your neighborhood to get one. So we've heard that anyone desiring to become expert in the service of Sri Radha and Krishna should always aspire to be under the guidance of the Goswamis, including, of course, Sanatana Goswami. So Kaviraj Goswami is trying to explain this to you. So next he says, Sanatana Kripaya Painu Bhaktir Siddhant Sri Rupa Kripaya Painu Bhakti Rasa Prant. By the mercy of Sanatana Goswami, I have learned the final conclusions of devotional service. And by the grace of Sri Rupa Goswami, I have tasted the highest nectar of devotional service. So we described Rupa Goswami, how he's commonly known as the Rasacharya, the Acharya of the science of rasa. What about Raghunath Das Goswami? He's known as the Prayojana Acharya, the Acharya writing about the most intimate levels of relationship with Krishna, particularly Madhurya Ras. So therefore Raghunath Das is commonly known as the Prayojana Acharya, the Acharya contributing knowledge and techniques for acting in the most confidential relationship with Krishna. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, Sri Sanatana Goswami Prabhu, the teacher of the science of devotional service, wrote several books, of which, what is the most famous? Brihad Bhagavatamrita. Anyone who wants to know about the subject matter of devotees, devotional service, and Krishna must read this book. You hear that? So the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust has put so much effort into publishing such a first-class rendition of Brihad Bhagavatamrita in several volumes, depending on which printing you get. It could be 2 massive volumes or 3 volumes. And Sanatana Goswami also wrote other things like a commentary on the 10th canto of Bhagavatam. And yes, he wrote Hari Bhakti Vilas. If you try to read, have you tried to read Hari Bhakti Vilas? You'll faint at all the rules and regulations.
Prabhupada say if you tried to follow all those rules, you'd go to. Anyway, I won't finish that.
So many Prabhupada says. Jumping ahead, Srila Raghunath Das Goswami has described Sanatana Goswami in his prayer, Vilapa Kusumanjali, verse 6, where he has expressed his obligation to Sanatana Goswami in the following words. Vairaga Yug Bhakti Rasam Prayatnaya Apayayan Mam Anabipsum Andam Creep Ambudir Yat Paraduka Duki Sanatanastam Prabhum Ashrayami. Translation. I was unwilling to drink the nectar of devotional service, possessed of renunciation. But Sanatana Goswami, out of his causeless mercy, made me drink it, even though I was otherwise unable to do so. Therefore, he is an ocean of mercy. He is very compassionate to fallen souls like me, and thus it is my duty to offer my respectful obeisances unto his lotus feet. You see, the nectar of Vaishnava appreciation. I always point out, if someone has done the smallest thing to help you in your spiritual life, never let that person forget it. Not that, oh well, now I've taken initiation, I have my guru, that's the only thing. That kind of mentality is kanishta, third-class bhakta. You can easily splash and swim in the ocean of devotee appreciation just by remembering this. Anyone who's helped you in the slightest, even 50 years ago, you never let them forget it. I always tell the story of how when my first visit to the Brooklyn Temple, I was very nervous. I didn't know what to expect walking in that door. Took me 6 months to work up the courage to go to the temple. 6 months of reading Prabhupada's books every day for 3 hours. But still, I didn't want to go to any temple. I thought, the books are so wonderful, but those people, those Hare Krishnas, are so strange looking. But anyway, long story short, after 6 months, one Sunday, I decided to go. And I got off, in New York, what you call tubes, they call the subway. I got off the subway and took the 10-minute walk from the subway station to the temple. 2 blocks away, I could hear and 1 block away, I could smell the incense in the air. Oh, what planet am I going to? So you have to walk up steps, open the front door. I had no idea what was going to be on the other side. As soon as I opened the door, there was this tall, effulgent brahmachari saying, "Welcome, brother! You've come to the right place." All my fears just disappeared. "Come on in. Take off your shoes. Put your shoes here. Go on into the temple room, into the kirtan. Move your feet around." So whenever I see that devotee, even though this was 52 years ago, I always remind that devotee, "Thank you. Just for that. Just for doing that." So the more you get into this mentality as demonstrated by Kaviraj Goswami, the more blissful your life becomes. It's hard, due to our conditioning, to think that by glorifying someone else and their service to Krishna, not mundane activity, you're not glorifying mundane activity, you're glorifying service to Krishna, that you'll feel happier. We're blinded by illusion thinking, I'll be happy when I do something for me. But in bhakti, the more you relish the association of devotees and express that, and the more you teach others how to relish the association of devotees, automatically you become happy without worrying about your own happiness. What a relief. So today we're glorifying Sanatana Goswami on his disappearance. We wish all of you the opportunity to read the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust rendition of Brihad Bhagavatamrita after you've read Prabhupada's books sufficiently. Any questions? We have a couple of minutes. Yes, is that Radha Raman way in the back? I have to take off these glasses so I can clearly see you.
Maharaj, I was just wondering, because you were mentioning that we can read Bhagavatamrita after sufficiently having read Prabhupada's books. So I was wondering, what is the prerequisite for reading the up-and-coming Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu from the BBC?
Same, after sufficiently reading Prabhupada's books. I was about to say that I remember Prabhupada's instruction for reading Nectar of Devotion. He said, when you read Nectar of Devotion, just read it, and at the right point in your spiritual development, you'll realize what you're reading. He said, meanwhile, don't come to Prabhupada saying, "Prabhupada, what is this? Prabhupada, what is that?" Yes.
Question, if you read it, but if you can't follow it, why you struggle?
What is that?
If you read it but you can't follow it, why are you struggling to understand?
You're reading too much, but you can't follow it. What's the point?
Engage in devotional service, and that will give you the spiritual intelligence to understand what you're reading.
Okay.
This is stated in first canto of Bhagavatam. Vasudeva Kataruchi Sanmahat Sevaya Vipraha. By rendering service to the great devotee, you get a taste. Kataruchi for talks about Vasudeva, talks about Krishna. Very good. Thank you. Anything else? Yes.
How do we know if we've sufficiently read Prabhupada's books?
How do we know if we sufficiently read Prabhupada's books? At least several times. You never read them enough. Every time you open them, you see newer and newer realizations. But at least a few times. Yes.
Maharaj, when we're preaching or hearing about bhakti, it seems like it's a one-size-fits-all. Like we're not the body and it doesn't really matter who we are. But then when we speak about the Goswamis and Abhideya, Sambandha and Prayojan, it seems the deeper you get or the more you read, it seems more and more specific. That why can't we just get all three of those from any? Why does it? Any of the acharyas. Why?
Have you read Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, Prabhupada's book? It's all there, going on in one volume. I call it one of the most forgotten books by Prabhupada in ISKCON, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, because we think we have Chaitanya Charitamrita, so we don't need Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. But read it. I listened to it over and over again on audio. It contains all that going on at once. Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojan, all in one book. So that's my response to you. All right, looks like we have time for one more question.
She has a question.
But she's in the front. What can I do? Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. You spoke about envy and also appreciation of devotees, but sometimes I feel like I tend to get envious of other people's devotion to Krishna.
That's what I meant, yes. So appreciate. Oh, you're doing so nicely. Let me learn from you.
But then how do you kind of balance the pulls of Maya against that?
Just open your mouth and glorify. Don't be so mental about it. Just, you're doing wonderful. Is it so hard? Could be your own spouse, huh? Jai Shri Shri Radha Vandadishwar. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Devamrita Swami Maharaj ki.